The chairman of Lechco's Railways Subcommittee, Michael Chen, has urged the government to set up its own panel to investigate the high-speed rail link fiasco.
The former KCRC boss wants to know if there has been a cover-up, and he's not satisfied that a review committee set up by the MTRC will go far enough. 2 weeks after announcing that the $67 billion high-speed rail link to Guangzhou will be delayed for 2 years due to unforeseen difficulties, the MTRC last night decided to set up an independent committee to investigate how the project was managed. MTRC Chairman Raymond Chen said board members want a more detailed assessment of the causes of the delay and why they were not clearly informed about its impact on the opening and costs. The New People's Party lawmaker Michael Tian, who also chairs Lechco's Railways Subcommittee, is not impressed.
The MTR investigation team is set up by the independent directors on behalf of the minority shareholders. I have no problem with that. But that cannot replace the independent investigation committee that I am asking government to set up. That would represent government as the major shareholder and as the overall monitor of the entire project, and also, the wider Hong Kong community.
But Tian, who himself headed KCRC until it merged with the MTRC in December 2007, stressed that the railway firm should be given a chance to come clean.
Basically, the two issues that they need to address is, first of all, was it a cover-up or simply was it a mismanagement, or both? And if there's cover-up, up to what level?
On Tuesday, Tian led a delegation of lawmakers on an inspection of the work at the rail line's terminus in West Kowloon. Afterwards, he questioned whether MTRC executives had lied to legislators about the actual progress of the project. He said engineers told him that unforeseen granite formations at the lowest level were holding up work. But in its half-yearly report submitted to Lechco in November, the railway operator said excavation work had already begun at the lowest level. A Chinese-language newspaper today claimed that the MTRC knew about the granite at the site 4 years ago. Tian wants to find out when the MTRC realized that the rock formation would delay the project. There have been media reports suggesting that railway executives were aware of the delay about 12 months before they made it public.
Timing is crucial. If they knew about it only in March of this year, then there's no allegation of cover-up at the top. But if they had known as early as last year, then of course the impression would be very different.
Railway Subcommittee lawmakers will be pressing for answers when they meet MTRC executives on Monday.
Overseas, Iraqis are voting in the first parliamentary elections since the US withdrawal 3 years ago. The country was devastated by the US-led war, and now it's ravaged by sectarian conflict. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is trying to convince voters he can restore law and order, although his first 2 terms have only seen an increase in the violence. There's been a string of major bombings in the run-up to the election. But there is unity among his Sunni, Shiite and Kurdish rivals, who say they will set aside their sectarian differences to unseat the man they see as a puppet of the US.
Ukraine has admitted losing its grip on law enforcement agencies in eastern cities where separatist movements have taken over key areas unchallenged.
Ukraine's new leaders are blaming Moscow for the unrest, while the US has warned it will not allow Russia to take over a single piece of NATO territory. ATV's Ben O'Rourke reports.
Hundreds of separatist protesters stormed government buildings in the eastern city of Luhansk in Ukraine's industrial heartland. They smashed their way into the building, cheered on by crowds of supporters. Some got onto the roof and threw the Ukrainian flag off the building, whipping the crowd into a frenzy. The police didn't do anything to stop them, and their lack of action was noted in Kiev. Acting President Alexander Turchinov said the police were incapable of fulfilling their duties, so he had demanded the dismissal of commanders in Luhansk and another breakaway city, Donetsk. He said members of local law enforcement bodies had displayed helplessness and sometimes criminal betrayal. Kiev complains that Russia is behind the separatist protests.
Ukrainians want to live in peace and want to be left alone. The highest level of cynicism is a Russian reference to the right for self-defense in a situation where it is Russia who is acting as aggressor, having occupied Crimea, and it is brutally interfering in the internal affairs of Ukraine, destabilizing and trying to create an explosive situation in the eastern regions of Ukraine.
But Russian President Vladimir Putin said overnight that the US was clearly behind all the turmoil in Ukraine. He said Kiev's policy of cracking down on dissent in the east is a mistake and called for dialogue. Speaking after a meeting with the presidents of Belarus and Kazakhstan, Putin said he wouldn't be introducing any sanctions in retaliation for the latest set slapped on Russia by the US and Europe. But if they continue, he may consider limiting foreign access to Russia's energy sector. US Secretary of State John Kerry had that threat in mind when he called on European allies to work together with Washington to ensure they're not dependent on Russian oil. At the same time, he had a stern warning for Moscow.
We have to make it absolutely clear to the Kremlin that NATO territory is inviolable. We will defend every single piece of it.
Kerry said the Ukraine crisis was a wake-up call for NATO. Ben O'Rourke, ATV News.
Time now for sports with Bolo.
And the NBA deals a blow to racism.
Indeed, and it took less than a week. The world's top professional basketball league has come down hard on the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers for making racist remarks. Donald Sterling has been banned for life and is being forced to sell the team.
Hey. And I'm straight out of Compton.